Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I know most of you have heard this information in the news before, but seeing the recent developments are coming fast upon us, it would only be prudent to look at the situation with fresh eyes. According to The Intercept and a plethora of others under, the FBI has quietly investigated white supremacist infiltration of law enforcement. Subtitle: Bureau policies have been crafted to take into account the active presence of domestic extremists in U.S. police departments. January 31st, 2017. Quote, white supremacists and other domestic extremists maintain an active presence in U.S. police departments and other law enforcement agencies. A striking reference to that conclusion appears in a classified FBI counterterrorism policy guide from April 2015, obtained by The Intercept. Stop. Ladies and gentlemen, do you perceive what this is actually saying? I perceive countless innocent people have endured the worst at the hands of the worst. And because it's classified, the FBI can't tell anyone, not even judges. They can't tell anyone if the cop that just shot that kid in the back is a known grand dragon or not. And I don't think it's a coincidence this perfect storm happened this way either. What I mean is, I believe the neo-Nazi KKK brown shirts have put themselves into position for the dominionists to use when ready. The weak, common white Christian needed someone with the moxie and guts to crack the eggs they will need to be cracked. They need someone that is willing and able to do what they need to be done. Is it any small wonder the same two strange bedfellows are in power together now? How else do you explain the only time in the history of the interweb, within an hour, every last photo, etc., of a public servant disappeared off the face of the earth? Even the infamous Anonymous couldn't find a photo of Darren Wilson. That was the strangest crap I have ever seen, and no one seems to understand just how remarkable that feat was. Was he already in a classified file, thus able to simply hit the red button to suppress all information if need be? But bottom line, we have known racists, known murderers, dressed in blue, and the feds can't say a thing about it. Are you guys hearing me? But wait. To further the affliction, these suckers publicly act like they don't know why police abuse has skyrocketed. Why, get this now, why for the second time the police feel so emboldened they actually turned their backs on their boss while he was speaking to them. Your true president actually said that he is pissed at you for questioning the integrity of the police. Pissed at you have the audacity to think there is systematic racism, and pissed that we don't venerate the pigs. But we already know what side of the fence that cat's on. Let's continue if you don't believe me, please. Quote, the guide, which details the process by which the FBI enters individuals on the terror watch list, the known or suspected terrorist file, notes that, personal quote, domestic terrorism investigations focused on militia extremists, white supremacist extremists, and sovereign citizen extremists often have identified active links to law enforcement officers, and explains in some detail how bureau policies have been crafted to take this infiltration into account. Stop. Bingo. Am I the only person to proceed? The federal agencies have crafted their own policies to accommodate, whether defensively or passively, rather than stopping the perpetrators. They simply crafted their policies to continue to monitor genocide on the so-called African American people. But let's continue if you don't believe me. Quote, although these right-wing extremists have posed a growing threat for years, federal investigators have been reluctant to publicly address that threat or to point out the movement's long-standing strategy of infiltrating the law enforcement community. I told you. Quote, no centralized recruitment process or set of national standards exists for the 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, many of which have deep historical connections to racist ideologies. What? Many of which have deep historical connections to racist ideologies. Stop. Yep. Lucifer's black men and black women not only do their dirty dealings alongside of these dirty oinkers, they even obliged by their wicked code of silence to cover up the bastards too. Now, to prove my earlier points, let's continue, please. Quote, in a heavily redacted version of the October 2006 FBI Internal Intelligence Assessment, the agency raised the alarm over white supremacist groups' historical interest in, personal quote, infiltrating law enforcement communities or recruiting law enforcement personnel. The effort, the memo noted, personal quote, can lead to investigative breaches and can jeopardize the safety of law enforcement sources or personnel. Stop. I told you. 1. The report is heavily redacted, which can only mean they are protecting the bastard's identity, etc. 2. They can't tell anyone about the bastard's involvement because it may jeopardize other investigations or rat out their informants. And 3. Notice, this is a historical interest. Seeing the police actually took pictures in their robes and police uniforms as late as the 1960s, this has to be talking about more recent times. If this is the case, it is looking more and more like the Dominionist Manifesto conjured way back in the 1970s and recited in the media before 1985, needed their own brand of brown shirts to stir the pot when needed. Is it just a coincidence the same neo-Nazis and the Christians are sharing human ultimate power today? I'm talking about Steve, Camp of the Saints Bannon, and Mike, thank you mother, may I have another pence? It was just a question though. I don't mean nothing by it. But think about this for a minute. Bannon was a Goldman Sachs banker whose roots are embedded in demonic white power. That's it. If what I'm saying is at least partially correct, others of greater or lesser pedigree are doing the same. Let's continue for more clues, shall we? Quote, the memo also states that law enforcement had recently become aware of the term, personal quote, ghost skins. That's G-H-O-S-T, skins, used among white supremacists to describe, personal quote, those who avoid overt displays of their beliefs to blend into society and covertly advance white supremacist causes. In at least one case, the FBI learned of a skinhead group encouraging ghost skins to seek employment with law enforcement agencies in order to warn crews of any investigation. Stop. So as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that vibe you get off that white boy is probably right. But I attest, Mr. Charlie in general is a ghost skin. Trust me, he is just one well-timed trigger away from showing you his ghost face as well. The white man, thus every culture trying to be like him, don't like you. Why would he? He can't truly be himself around you, and that frustrates him. In his eyes, again, in his eyes, he is being forced to be around you. He is being forced not to call you a nigger like his heart yearns to do. He is being forced to work 9 hours a day next to a colored and not be able to call you a nigger like his heart yearns to do. You guys sure ask a lot from the white man, I tell you. They don't like you living in their neighborhoods and mad because you have the job to afford the house. A white man should have that job. I can go on and on and on about how the white man feels like he's trapped and forced to appease you just to survive. I know you want to say, there's just a few bad apples, Scribe. Isolated cases, come on. Okay, remember the video where we discovered in the great southern state of Alabama, my old playground of Dothan to be exact, just about everyone on the police force were card-carrying Nazis, taking pictures in front of their crest and all? If you remember that video, let's see what else we can dig up in the article, shall we? Quote, that report appears after a series of scandals involving local police and sheriff departments. In Los Angeles, for example, a U.S. District Court judge found in 1991 that members of a local sheriff department had formed a neo-Nazi gang and habitually terrorized black and Latino residents. Stop. Can you say genocide? They call themselves the Invisible White Knights for a reason. What? Too obscure? How bad can one racist policeman or police force actually be? You want detailed examples? Okay. Quote, in Chicago, John Burge, a police detective and rumored KKK member, was fired and eventually prosecuted in 2008 over charges related to the torture of at least 120 black men during his decade-long career. Burge notoriously referred to an electric shock device he used during interrogations as the nigger box. In Cleveland, officials found that a number of police officers had scrawled racist or Nazi graffiti throughout their department's locker rooms. In Texas, that great southern state of Texas, 2 police officers were fired when it was discovered they were Klansmen. One of them said he had tried to boost the organization's membership by giving an application to a fellow officer he thought shared his, personal quote, his white, Christian, heterosexual values. Stop. Like I said, all Mr. Charlies are racist. Am I the only person who is taken aback by the openness of their actions? The inception of cops had a racist job description. Cops are generational, meaning the dad taught his child the way he should go. Let's continue if you don't believe me. Listen to the FBI white man tell you about it. Quote, although the FBI has not publicly addressed the issue of white supremacist infiltration of the law enforcement since the 2006 report, in a 2015 speech, FBI Director James Comey made an unprecedented acknowledgement of the role historically played by law enforcement in communities of color. Personal quote, all of us in law enforcement must be honest enough to acknowledge that much of our history is not pretty. Stop. This was said in 2015, people. Yet, somehow in some way, they want you to perceive they are there to protect and serve your community. And just as Nixon's genocidal device decree intended, the common white man has been beguiled, triggered really, through witchcrafts, sorceries, pharmakia, advertising campaigns, and Hegelian dialect to think you are the problem. This man has just admitted their beginnings were formulated under a genocidal charter, and apparently it never ended as of 2015. You don't believe me?
And how can this be? For he is the Kwisatz Haderach.
Hey!